My boss kept pestering me about why I always looked exhausted at work. The real reason? I was up until 3 a.m., glued to my gaming console, but in a moment of panic, I blurted out, "I've been taking night classes to learn Spanish." Her face lit up. "That's incredible. My partner Diego is from Spain. You should totally practice with him sometime." I nodded, praying she'd drop it, but she didn't. She brought it up constantly. "How's your Spanish going? Learned any cool phrases yet? Diego's thrilled to meet someone who loves the language." I dodged with vague responses like, "It's tough but worth it," or "I'm working on my accent." Meanwhile, I was still gaming into the wee hours and dragging myself to work like a sleep-deprived ghost. After a week of this, she cornered me by the water cooler. "Guess what? I'm hosting a small dinner party this Saturday. Just a few folks. You have to come to practice with Diego." My heart sank. "I don't want to intrude," I started, but she cut me off. "Nonsense. Diego's been asking about you non-stop. He's even digging out his old Spanish recipe books to cook something special." I felt awful. I tried to wriggle out. "I'm not sure I'm ready for full-on conversations yet." "Exactly why you need the practice. Diego will be so patient." She was already walking away, tossing over her shoulder. "Saturday at 7. Don't even think about bailing." The next 3 days were pure chaos. I downloaded every Spanish learning app I could find. Babbel, Duolingo, you name it. I watched Spanish films with subtitles during lunch breaks, bought a Spanish-English dictionary, and scribbled random phrases, but it was useless. You can't master a language in 3 days from scratch. Friday night I lay awake, not gaming for once, just staring at the ceiling, dreading the inevitable. I considered faking an illness, switching teams or quitting and moving across the country. Saturday came and I was a nervous wreck. I showed up at her house clutching a bottle of wine, sweating buckets. She greeted me with a huge smile. "Diego's so excited to meet you. He's been cooking all day." The aroma of spices and roasted peppers filled the air, and I heard someone singing softly in the kitchen. She led me through the living room, where a few co-workers were mingling. They turned and grinned. "This is the Spanish scholar." The pressure was mounting. In the kitchen there was Diego, a warm, middle-aged guy stirring a pot. He spun around with a big smile and launched into rapid Spanish. I caught maybe hola and bien. I froze, completely out of my depth. He kept talking, waving his ladle, getting more animated. My boss watched, beaming, expecting me to reply. The silence stretched. Everyone had followed us into the kitchen, staring. In a blind panic, I blurted the only phrase I could recall, "Me gusta queso." I like cheese. Dead silence. Then Diego burst into laughter, doubling over. Turns out he was just teasing me, but no one else laughed. My boss's face was a mix of shock and disappointment. My co-workers around the kitchen counter went quiet. Diego's laughter rang out alone until he noticed the awkward vibe. "That was funny, right?" he said, trying to lighten the mood. But the damage was done. My lie, meant to cover up my late-night gaming, had turned into a humiliating fiasco. "Wait, you don't speak Spanish?" my boss asked, her voice icy. I clutched the wine bottle like a shield. "I tried to learn, really," I stammered. "It's been a rough week. I was tired. I couldn't keep up." "A week?" she snapped, her tone rising. "You let me believe you'd been studying Spanish for months, that you were passionate about it. I got Diego excited, had him cook his grandmother's special dish because he thought you cared about the culture." She air-quoted, "culture," her eyes flashing with anger. I apologized, swore I didn't mean to offend, admitted I made it up to hide my gaming obsession. But it was too late. What started as a harmless fib had become a betrayal, a public embarrassment. She insisted I stay for dinner since Diego had cooked all day. She sat me right next to him. Every bite felt like swallowing glass. Everyone tossed around Spanish phrases, chuckling, while I felt invisible. Diego stopped being friendly, giving me sidelong glances like I was an unwelcome guest. Monday at work, I was a laughingstock. Not outright, but the subtle jabs were relentless. A sticky note on my desk with random Spanish words. A voice message saying, "Hola, queso." The worst was when a manager from another team who barely knew me smirked and said, "So, you're the cheese guy? Let's have a meeting in Spanish, how's that?" It was mockery dressed as humor, and I was the office clown. Slowly, they sidelined me from key meetings. My boss stopped assigning me important tasks. Projects I was lined up for went to others. When I confronted her, she said flatly, "If you lie about something so small, how can I trust you with work?" That's when it hit me. One dumb lie had trashed my reputation. This modern, inclusive company turned one mistake into a scarlet letter. They acted like I'd used system. I'd committed a crime. The mockery wasn't just a one-off. It became a sport with smirks and sly comments. It took time, but one night, staring at my dark computer screen, I decided to flip the script. No more lies, no excuses, just results and a quiet plan for payback. If they wanted to laugh at the cheese guy, I'd give them a performance they'd never forget, and they'd regret underestimating me. I went home that night feeling like garbage. I couldn't even boot up my console. That screen, once my escape, now just showed a guy who'd lost control of his story. I'd been humiliated in a place that preached open culture. It was all a sham. A clique where one misstep made you an outcast. They punished me with smirks and sarcasm. But I was done being their punchline. I re-downloaded the Spanish apps, but this time, it wasn't a cover story. I signed up for an intensive online course with daily lessons from a strict Madrid-born tutor who took no nonsense. At work, I kept my head down, ignored the cheese emojis and emails, the palabra del dia notes on my chair. Their jabs became my fuel. I ate lunch alone, came in early, stayed late. Every spare moment went to Spanish. A month in, I understood most of what I heard in movies. 2 months, I could hold full conversations with my tutor. 3 months, I had my first dream in Spanish. 4 months, I ordered fluently at a tapas bar, and the waiter asked if I was from Valencia. Then the company announced a year-end party with a cultural theme. My department got Spain. It was almost too perfect. My boss was thrilled, already calling Diego to plan something authentic. She sent me a message. If you want to just observe this time, no pressure. Maybe say a short phrase if you're up for it. Her nerve made my blood boil, acting like she was doing me a favor after everything. I replied, happy to contribute? She had no clue what was coming. I spent 2 weeks prepping with my tutor, crafting a speech on grit, identity, and rising above, all in polished Spanish. He fine-tuned every word, every pause. At the party, I wore a sharp, subtle nod to Spanish style, classy, not overdone. On stage, she introduced me with that smug grin. Here's our cheese enthusiast with a little phrase. The crowd snickered, expecting a flop. But when I spoke, it wasn't some basic line. It was a full, eloquent speech. The room went quiet. I used precise vocabulary, deliberate pauses, and closed with a line my tutor taught me. Quien se ríe de ti hoy, un día te aplaudirá de pie. Those who laugh at you today will one day applaud you standing. Silence. Then Diego, in the corner, started a slow clap. Colleagues joined. My boss tried a nervous laugh, but no one followed. That night, co-workers messaged me privately. Praise, apologies, one even saying, man, I feel like a jerk, you're incredible. My boss, not a word. But she started pulling me back into meetings, assigning projects, even saying, should have taken you seriously sooner, huh? I just smiled. I hadn't forgotten how she'd trashed me for sport. Now I'd use her own game against her. From that moment, something shifted, not just at work, but in me. Every word of that speech rebuilt my pride, piece by piece. I was back in control, playing by my rules now. Colleagues warmed up, offering weak compliments to smooth things over. My boss kept up her fake support, acting like she'd planned my comeback. Then she slipped up. In front of 2 managers, she said, guess embarrassment taught you more than a course, right? They laughed. I didn't. That's when I knew she felt no remorse, just another jab to keep me in line. I started watching her closer, noticing how she targeted others, especially new hires. She'd overload them with tough tasks, then call out their mistakes in meetings, always with a just kidding tone. It was calculated cruelty, subtle enough to dodge blame. I began documenting everything. Dates, names, her exact words, reactions. I recorded a meeting where she told an intern, if you're going to mess up like this, why even show up? Then, in front of HR, she denied it with a saintly smile. But I had the audio. For weeks, I collected evidence. Screenshots of snarky emails, recordings of her mocking clients' accents. Everything went into an encrypted folder. I waited for the right moment. It came when they announced a leadership role she'd chased for years but never got due to attitude issues. This time, with her cultural event, Win, she thought she was a shoo-in. She started a charm offensive, praising me publicly, even sending a cake with a note. To our favorite linguist, proud of your growth. Hypocrite. I booked a meeting with HR, presented my evidence calmly, no venom, just facts. I said I understood mistakes happen, but her pattern was toxic, unfit for leadership. HR paused, then said, we'll investigate thoroughly. Thank you for coming forward. A week later, she was summoned for a review. She returned, rattled. No more smiles, no greetings. She tried fishing for who ratted her out, but I stayed silent. Soon, an email dropped. She was out of the running for the role and reassigned to a low-profile department, practically a dead end. As she cleared her desk, she passed me without a word. I looked her in the eye and said in Spanish, Las palabras duelen más de lo que crees. Words hurt more than you think. She got it. Her eyes flashed with raw, silent anger. She knew she'd lost to the guy she'd tried to break for fun. But I wasn't done. The others who laughed, who piled on, didn't get a free pass. Amanda, a marketing hotshot, was the worst. She'd spread me gusta queso like a company-wide joke, even making t-shirts for the anniversary party. I saw them. Pretended I didn't, but I remembered. Amanda was sharp, ambitious, but ruthless, climbing over others, leaving one colleague in tears. She never left evidence, but she underestimated me. We crossed paths in meetings. I smiled. She smirked, thinking I was still the cheese guy. One day at the coffee machine, she quipped, "Still gaming all night, or are you a Spanish citizen now?" I looked at her and replied in flawless Spanish, "A veces, la lengua más afilada no está en la boca, sino en quien observa en silencio." Sometimes the sharpest tongue belongs to those who watch quietly. She blinked, confused. I translated, staring her down. "You'll get it soon." That week I was tapped to lead a mandatory intercultural communication workshop, my idea from months back. Marketing, Amanda included, had to attend. She tried to weasel out, claiming prior training, but HR shut her down. Company policy, everyone attends. On day one, I opened with a slide. "Words are feathers until they become bricks in the wrong hands." I said it, eyes locked on her. Her face flushed. She knew. From then on, she dodged me. I pressed forward, never forgetting. Real revenge isn't loud. It's the silence when they realize you've won, when the CEO's praising you in meetings. But the company wasn't just her or Amanda. It was a system that let people like them thrive while others got crushed. I had one more move. A national conference on toxic workplaces invited me to speak, thanks to my workshop's success. It was a big stage. Sponsors, live streams, the works. Our CEO was there unannounced. I saw my chance. I wrote my speech with precision. No names, just enough detail to sting. I started light, joking about pretending to learn Spanish to hide my gaming habit. The crowd laughed, then hushed. I laid it out. The lie, the mockery, the inclusive company that let it fester. Then I showed how results, reinvention, and evidence changed the story. I called out corporate bullying, how it hides its humor, how toxic leaders erode teams. I ended with my journey from ridicule to respect. The room gave a standing ovation. The CEO shook my hand afterward. "We need to talk." Soon, I was invited to a new integrity and culture committee with veto power over promotions and behavior-based decisions. I accepted, demanding full autonomy, no meddling, no superficial fixes. They agreed. When Amanda tried for a promotion, my signature blocked it. Incompatible with our new culture. She knew. Her glare in the elevator was my prize. My ex-boss emailed, praising my speech, trying to reconnect. I replied, "Buena suerte," and moved on. Revenge isn't destruction. It's shining so bright they can't look at you. One loose end remained. Diego. He hadn't mocked me maliciously that night, just laughed carelessly, but his reaction fueled the fire. I needed closure, not vengeance. I got his number through company contacts. He was still tied to my ex-boss. I called one morning. "Hola, Diego, soy yo, de la cena española, ¿recuerdas?" "It's me, from the Spanish dinner, remember?" A pause, then a chuckle. "El chico del queso." I sighed, but smiled. "Ya no soy ese chico." I'm not that kid anymore. We talked in Spanish, fluidly. I shared my side, not whining, just honest. The jokes, the whispers, the fallout. He listened, then said, "Nunca pensé que tendría ese impacto. Lo siento de verdad. I never thought it'd hit like that. I'm truly sorry. It was genuine. I accepted it. No es por mí ya. Es por los que callan, los que no tienen voz. It's not about me now. It's for those who stay silent, who have no voice." He paused, then surprised me. "¿Sabes? Después de esa noche, empecé a enseñar español en una ONG para jóvenes. Era lo menos que podía hacer." After that night, I started teaching Spanish at an NGO for kids. It was the least I could do. We hung up, at peace. A weight lifted. Not pride, just calm. Revenge is complete when it's not about tearing others down, but rebuilding yourself. I kept teaching, speaking at events, getting quoted in magazines, invited to podcasts. I never named names or the company. My story was about showing a stumble can spark change. One rainy afternoon, drafting a new talk, I got an email from my ex-boss. Short, no fluff. "Heard your latest speech. I underestimated you. Good thing the world didn't." I smiled, didn't reply. I didn't need her approval or anyone's. That lie, born from fear of admitting I gamed too much, taught me more than any app. It showed me rock bottom isn't the end. It's where you find your footing. And yeah, I still love cheese, but now I pair it with wine, in silence, fluent in 3 languages. After my speech at the national conference, I thought I'd closed the book on my past. I'd turned a lie about learning Spanish into a fluent reality, rebuilt my reputation, and toppled my toxic boss with evidence and poise. The company's new integrity committee gave me influence, and Amanda's blocked promotion was my quiet triumph. Even Diego, the unwitting spark of my humiliation, had made amends by teaching Spanish to kids at an NGO. I was at peace, savoring my cheese and wine, fluent in 3 languages, and finally in control. But the corporate world doesn't let you rest on your laurels. A new game was brewing, and this time the stakes were higher. It started with a promotion. Not mine, yet, but a vacancy in a senior role overseeing multiple departments, including mine. The company, still reeling from the fallout of my ex-boss's transfer, was desperate to project stability. They needed someone authentic, they said, someone who embodied the new culture I'd helped champion. My name came up in whispers, but so did another. Victor, a slick, charismatic manager from the sales team. Victor was the kind of guy who could sell sand in a desert, but behind his charm was a trail of stepped-on toes. He'd been at the dinner where I'd blurted, "Me gusta queso," laughing louder than most. He'd worn Amanda's t-shirt at the anniversary party, grinning like it was his idea. Now, he was positioning himself as the face of progress, and I was his biggest obstacle. Victor wasted no time. At a team meeting, he slid into the chair next to me, flashing a grin. "Heard you're the Spanish star now," he said, voice dripping with mock admiration. "Bet you could sell our brand in Madrid." It sounded like a compliment, but his eyes said something else. "Stay out of my way." I smiled back, replying in Spanish, "Solo vendo lo que es real." I only sell what's real. He blinked, caught off guard, but recovered with a chuckle. The room watched, sensing the tension. The company announced a leadership challenge to fill the senior role. Candidates had to pitch a vision for uniting departments under the new culture. It was a public contest. Presentations at an all-staff summit, judged by executives and a panel of external consultants. Victor was all in, schmoozing higher-ups, dropping buzzwords like synergy and disruption. I entered too, not because I craved the title, but because I knew what Victor was, a polished version of my ex-boss, ready to charm his way up while crushing anyone below him. I'd seen him mentor interns by piling on work, then take credit for their wins. If he got the role, the toxic cycle would restart. I had 3 weeks to prepare. Victor was already rallying allies, including Amanda, who'd been lying low since her failed promotion. She was his unofficial campaign manager, whispering strategies and digging for dirt. I heard through a colleague that she'd told Victor about my gaming past, framing me as unreliable, despite my turnaround. It stung, but it wasn't surprising. The cheese boy label still lingered in their minds, a shadow they thought they could wield. I didn't confront them. Instead, I channeled my energy into my pitch, working late nights with my Spanish tutor to weave the language into my vision. I wanted to show that culture wasn't just a buzzword, it was accountability, resilience, and authenticity. The summit was held in a sleek conference center, packed with employees, execs, and consultants. Victor went first, delivering a polished speech about global unity and leveraging diversity. He threw in a few Spanish phrases, basic ones, mispronounced, and got polite applause. I caught Amanda smirking from the front row, handing him a water bottle like he'd already won. Then it was my turn. I stepped to the podium, heart pounding but steady. I opened in Spanish, fluid and deliberate. La cultura no es un eslogan. Es lo que hacemos cuando nadie nos mira. Culture isn't a slogan. It's what we do when no one's watching. The room went quiet. I shared my story. Not the lie this time, but the truth of my growth. I talked about rebuilding trust after a mistake, about how real leadership means owning your flaws and lifting others up, not tearing them down. I outlined a plan for cross-department collaboration, with mandatory training on workplace respect and anonymous feedback systems to catch toxicity early. I ended with a nod to my journey. Quien cae y se levanta no solo sobrevive, sino que inspira. Those who fall and rise don't just survive, they inspire. The applause was thunderous. The consultants leaned forward, scribbling notes. Victor's smile froze. Amanda's face was stone. After the summit, the CEO pulled me aside. "That was bold," he said. "We're watching you." I nodded, knowing the decision wasn't final, but feeling the shift. The next day, Victor cornered me in the break room. "Nice speech," he said, voice tight. "But this isn't a TED Talk. Results beat stories." I looked him in the eye and replied in Spanish, "Los resultados hablan, pero la verdad grita." Results speak, but truth screams. He walked away, jaw clenched. A week later, the decision came. I got the role. Victor was offered a lateral move to a regional office, framed as a growth opportunity, but everyone knew it was a step down. Amanda, tied to his campaign, lost more ground, her influence shrinking further. But I didn't gloat. I'd learned from my ex-boss's downfall. Revenge isn't loud. It's strategic, quiet, and permanent. In my new role, I rolled out changes fast. I launched the feedback system, catching subtle bullying before it festered. I mandated workshops, not just mine, but led by others who'd been sidelined, giving them a voice. The office vibe shifted. People spoke up without fear. Interns stopped dreading meetings. But not everyone was happy. Victor, before his transfer, tried one last jab. He sent an email to the team, congratulating me but slipping in, "Guess Spanish charm wins over substance." I didn't respond publicly. Instead, I invited him to a one-on-one, recorded with his consent for training purposes. In fluent Spanish, I laid out my expectations for his team's transition, calm and professional. He stumbled over his words, exposed. The recording went to HR, and his transfer was expedited. Amanda was trickier. She adapted, playing nice, even attending my workshops with a forced smile. But I saw through her. During one session, she tried undermining me, questioning my data on workplace morale in front of the group. I was ready. I pulled up stats from my feedback system, anonymous quotes from her own team, calling out her passive-aggressive emails. The room went silent. She flushed, mumbling an excuse. Later, she applied for a transfer, claiming new horizons. I signed off, noting, "Best wishes for alignment with our culture." She knew what I meant, but the real test came months later. The company was invited to an international business expo in Barcelona, a chance to pitch our brand to global partners. The CEO tapped me to lead the presentation, in Spanish, naturally. It was a full-circle moment, from a panicked lie to representing the company on a world stage. I prepared relentlessly, working with my tutor and a new contact, a Barcelona-based consultant who'd seen my conference speech online. We crafted a pitch-blending corporate strategy with cultural respect, emphasizing how accountability drives success. In Barcelona, the expo hall buzzed with executives from across Europe. My presentation was last, following a string of dry corporate talks. I stepped up, greeted the crowd in Spanish, and dove in. I shared our company's transformation, not the polished version, but the messy truth. How we'd faced toxicity, rebuilt trust, and empowered voices. I used my story as proof. A guy who faked Spanish fluency, learned it for real, and turned a mistake into a movement. The room erupted in applause. Partners approached afterward, wanting to collaborate. The CEO, watching from the back, gave me a nod. For the first time, it felt like respect, not caution. Back at the office, the expo win cemented my role. Colleagues who'd once mocked me now asked for advice. The cheese jokes were gone, replaced by hesitant admiration. But I hadn't forgotten the system that let the mockery thrive. I pushed harder on the committee, auditing old policies, exposing loopholes that protected toxic leaders. When a senior exec resisted, citing tradition, I presented data from my feedback system. 60% of staff felt silenced by outdated norms. He backed down. The CEO approved my reforms. One loose end lingered. Victor's old ally, Clara, a mid-level manager who'd quietly fueled the queso meme. She'd stayed under the radar, but I'd documented her role. Sly emails encouraging the t-shirts, subtle jabs in meetings. She was up for a promotion, banking on her clean record. I didn't confront her. Instead, I invited her to a committee review where we discussed historical behavior. I shared anonymized examples of her actions tied to morale data. She went pale, withdrew her application, and later resigned. I didn't gloat, just sent her a polite email in Spanish. Te deseo éxito en tu próximo capítulo. Wishing you success in your next chapter. The final piece was personal. I tracked down Diego again, not for closure, but gratitude. His NGO work had inspired me to volunteer, teaching Spanish to local teens. I called him one evening. "Diego, soy yo otra vez," I said. He laughed, warm as ever. "El chico que ya no es del queso." We talked about his classes, my expo speech, and how far we'd both come. I thanked him for showing me that even a mistake can spark change. He paused, then said, "Tú me enseñaste que un error no define a nadie." You taught me a mistake doesn't define anyone. That night, I sat with my wine and cheese, reflecting. The lie that started it all, hiding my gaming nights, had become a catalyst. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about rewriting the rules, not just for me, but for everyone who'd been silenced. I'd turned a corporate clique into a place where voices mattered. And as I looked at my reflection in the dark screen, no longer a portal to escape, but a mirror of who I'd become, I smiled. I was still the cheese guy, just one who spoke 3 languages and played the game better than they ever could.